as a GRC pro, if you're going to be advising on risk, you don't need to be the expert on said technology, right? You don't need to be the expert of the code repositories that exist within your organization. You don't have to be the expert in routing and switching. However, you should have enough knowledge to have an educated conversation, right? Because you're talking to the expert. You're not the expert. They're the expert. They know how the platform works. They know how the application works. And I believe if you want to do right and maintain the integrity of the profession and put your best foot forward and protect the organization, then you should have a basic understanding and knowledge of the technology stack within your organization.
This video will be sponsored by SNHU. So it's 2025 and cybersecurity is still all the rage. Breaches are at an all-time high and so are cyber salaries. But there's a problem you keep running into. Cyber jobs you want to land are requiring a degree and you don't have one. Let me introduce you to today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, SNHU. SNHU has a flexible online program that also touts one of the lowest tuitions in the country. SNHU is an affordable, accredited nonprofit university that has dedicated career advisors, webinars, internships, and more to prepare you to enter or advance in the workforce. There's a 32% projected growth of information security analyst roles through 2032, and according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median security analyst salary in 2023 was $120,000. In SNHU's program, you can learn about these critical subjects: cybersecurity foundations, networking, incident response, risk management, enterprise security, and more. As a cybersecurity professional, these are all important courses. If you would like to know more about SNHU's program, then please visit snhu.edu/textual or click the link below in the description. Welcome back to another episode of TechTual Talk. We got our lovely calls today.
Cyber Shorty.
And we got a guest all the way from ATL in the building today.
What's up, folks? This is Abdie.
But first and foremost, if you're listening to us on streaming platforms, please follow us and leave us a review. Help us out in the podcast analytics. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, all you gotta do is hit the like button. And if you keep on watching, subscribe. But for those of y'all that don't know, Abdie has been on the platform before. It was like 2 or 3 years ago. We did a live about GRC.
Yeah.
And he said he wanted to run it back, so I said, why not? That's one of my better live streams, actually.
Yeah, man. I was a nervous wreck. I remember because you were like, hey, Abdie, do you want to do this live on LinkedIn or do you want to do it just record and then edit it? I said, you know what? Nah, screw it. Let's do it live.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
But for the people who don't know who you are, just give a brief intro or spiel about yourself.
Yeah. So, my name is Abdie Mohamed, from San Diego, California. I'm based in Atlanta. I'm a GRC practitioner. I'm a cloud advisor these days, helping, organizations, teams, engineers, programs, use cloud effectively in terms of security-wise, in terms of cost-wise, and really just making sure that the technology that we use, we maximize and get that, return on investment. So these days, I do a lot of compliance remediation, vulnerability remediation, advising, consulting, about 80% of my job. And I'd probably say, 20%, I spend more time on, engineering work. Let's say we got a web app that's down. We check the logs, see what's going on. So, it's been fun. I've had different roles. I started off as a GRC analyst, and I remember all I was doing was pushing paper, pushing documentation that first year. And then I got into security auditing, and I, did a brief stint doing classified program. And, and when I say classified, that's pretty common in GovTech. There's different types of, work that you can do. I did some classified work for a season, and then got into the cloud, and then now, I help advise, the whole business area on how to use their cloud effectively because, people want to use cloud for whatever initiative that they got going on. The thing is, when it comes to adopting technology, as you know, right, as a business, it has to be attached to an outcome. There has to be a lot of intention in that. If there's no intention, and you're just blindly adopting technology, as you know, like you get technical debt, you get security risks, you get cost risk. Right, and if you're not careful with your technology adoption, it could be catastrophic in the long run. So my job is to make sure, I give people the education, the training, the advising necessary to be successful, with their technology implementation, specifically cloud. Perfect,
bro. Now, because she's itching to ask you a question.
Oh, I do have a question. So how would you go about explaining what cloud governance is to maybe one of your family members or a close friend?
Yeah, I would say, if I were to explain like cloud governance to somebody, a family or friend, I would say this. You have technology and you need technology to operate in your business, right? However, to do it effectively, you need to have oversight. You need to have some parameters, some rules, some policies, right? Imagine living in a country where there is no oversight, there's no laws, there's no policies, there's no procedures. If that doesn't exist, what do we call it? We call that the Wild Wild West. So I would say, like, to my family member, imagine, you have this piece of technology and you wanted to make sure that, other folks who use it know how to use it properly, but in a way that also makes sure that it's not causing trouble. You're not breaking anything. You're making sure that, hey, we're using it in a calm, in a not destructive fashion, right? I think when I think of governance, I think of oversight. I think rules. I think policies. I think procedures. I think direction. And cloud governance is really focused on what's the direction with our cloud strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I was just thinking about when you said governance. And today's time, all we think about is technical stuff.
Yeah.
But it can go for anything.
Yeah.
Like everything got to be zoned when it comes to buildings and stuff, got to pass inspection.
Right.
I thought about something that's not simple, but think about all the checks cars have to go through for the
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Think about the cars that probably used to have an odometer?
Yeah.
Speedometer.
Yeah.
Don't you know how fast you're going?
Yeah.
Or, hey, the people that didn't used to have tail lights. People just having wrecks all the time because you can't perceive distance.
That's crazy. There was a time where you wouldn't have taillights. That's crazy.
Yeah, like.
Wow, just thinking about it. Oh, my God.
You know what I'm saying? Now, for governance, I don't know how the governance went for horseback riding. I mean,
yeah.
Hey. So, but nah, what's funny? I forgot that you was from the West Coast.
Yeah, I'm from the West Coast, man. San Diego, California. Born and raised.
How you feel about Joey Badass pretty much putting all the West Coast rappers in a headlock?
Well, shout out to Joey. Shout out to Joey, man. That's him. Like,
I listened to some of the dishes when I was out of town and when I could, so it was pretty cool. But funny that you said pushing papers. While I was on the way here, I actually was talking to Lee, and he was just getting mad.
Lee Clayton?
Yeah.
That's a good brother, man. That's my man.
He drove down here because he had nothing to do. So he drove down here.
Wow.
He drove?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But he was just talking about how he's working with all these paper pushers in the government sector. He's like, they don't know nothing.
Yeah.
And he was like, a lot of the people who's on the interview now are going to be paper pushers and they're not getting hired because they don't know any technical stuff.
Right.
This goes back into what you want to talk about that time when I made the poll about GRC being technical or non-technical.
Yeah.
And your thoughts about it, especially coming from, like you said, you just started off as being like a paper pusher.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about it? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? So there's two parts about this. The first, let's define what technical is, right? So sometimes when we hear technical, we think operating systems, we think, programming, we think network devices, routers and switches. But, is configuring macros Excel, is that not technical? Who defines what technical is? Is technical exclusive to operating systems? Or are we, are mathematicians not technical? Like, what are scientists not technical?
Yeah.
What's the definition of technical? Is it just using technology? You know what I mean? So I think the definition of technical is, when we only make technical, when we define technical as working with operating systems, working with network devices, router switches, or working with programming. If we just have the definition of technical to just that, we're not acknowledging and respecting the other areas in our space that are technical that isn't working with those things that I just mentioned before. That's part one. Part two, I would say, as a GRC practitioner, you want to have oversight and make sure the right policies and procedures are in place. That's the G in governance, right? You want to make sure you have the policies in place, and procedures in place to protect the organization and manage risk to an acceptable level. It's hard to advise on risk, right? Because I'm talking from my experience. I have worked with engineers, and I've had a scenario, right, where I didn't know anything about a container technology. And I pressed this engineer and said, hey, what are y'all doing for container security? And he replied to me, said, hey, container security is pretty broad. What do you mean by that? Are you talking about securing the host operating system? Are you talking about the image repository? Are you talking about the runtime engine? And my answer, I froze. I didn't have an answer for him. I went back to my desk after that meeting, and I told him I'll get back with him. And I sat down. This is way back 4 years ago. And I remember thinking like, that was wrong. I shouldn't have pressed him about something I didn't do any homework on, which goes back to advising on risk. As a GRC pro, if you're going to be advising on risk, you don't need to be the expert on said technology, right? You don't need to be the expert of the code repositories that exist within your organization. You don't have to be the expert in routing and switching. However, you should have enough knowledge to have an educated conversation, right? Because you're talking to the expert. You're not the expert. They're the expert. They know how the platform works. They know how the application works. And I believe if you want to do right and maintain the integrity of the profession and put your best foot forward and protect the organization, then you should have a basic understanding and knowledge of the technology stack within your organization. So it's really hard to advise on risk if you don't have any knowledge of the tech stack and stuff. If you don't know what a port or protocol is, the difference between SSH and Telnet, right? And these are basic, basic stuff, but it's the basics that trip most companies up, right? And I would say if we don't, as a GRC pro, if you don't have those sound fundamentals, especially just within your organization, because every business, their tech stacks are different. They might be using Kubernetes. This company might be using OpenShift, right? But you want to make sure you understand the technical fundamentals as well as the technology stack within your organization to advise on risk. Because if you don't understand the tech stack, you're not going to earn the respect of the practitioners that you're working with, the engineers that you're working with. And if our game as a GRC practitioner or security advisor, it is really a game of influence. You cannot influence if there's not a healthy level of acknowledgement that you've done your homework. So again, this is from my experience. I walked out that meeting feeling like an idiot. And it's not fair as a GRC practitioner if you don't understand the tech stack and you're advising on software engineers or systems engineers or legal, you're trying to advise them on how to do something, but you haven't done your part of your homework, and it boils down to you want to put your business, wherever you're working or your business in general, in a successful spot. You do that by making sure that you advise on risk from an educated perspective. And that's my take on it. Do you have to be technical? Yes. You do have to be technical. Do you need to be the expert in everything? You don't need to be the expert in everything, but you have to have a fundamental knowledge, the basics, the fundamental knowledge of the tech stack that you're working with to make an educated advice, because the engineers are coming to you. They're saying, hey, we found this vulnerability. Hey, we have this compliance certification coming up. How do we go about earning that, right? So, that's my take on it.
No, that's a good take, because when you were talking about being technical, I feel like it's anything that you can go in depth on subject-wise.
That's a good point.
It's some people who probably know zero about security, zero about networking, but these people have been building PCs for years.
Oh, for sure.
They can tell you everything, specs, schematics. This fan is better than this fan because of this. It's overclocked to this. So they're technical for that. So, I mean, we know people that make livings. They have these channels where they talk about anime. Very technical, high-level stuff, detail. And they are doing all type of stuff where they're trying to compare and contrast the speed of light and how fast it's moving and a sound barrier.
You are right.
So it's just I feel like it's just stuff you can go in depth in. And I think the issue that we come into is, and I get it, people can get into GRC with no experience because, and I'll put the caveat, is that a lot of these people have some transferable skills from other areas.
Oh, for sure.
That could work.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, I think some people do feel slighted a little bit because it's like, hey, you're telling people that we know that don't have any experience with this stuff to come in and all they're going to do is keep on asking me questions all the time and I can't even do my work.
That's it.
And that happens a lot.
That's it. And, and it's not that people aren't going to help you, right? But it's one of those things where, if you come in on a job, right, and you're constantly poking at the engineers, for them, they're like, well, we have a deadline. We have this application we got to push out to production soon. There needs to be a value exchange. I think asking questions is great when you start a new job. I think you should ask questions, especially those first 90 days. But, past that, if you're constantly asking questions, you're poking them, how does this work? How does this work? Past that for a long period of time, it's like, well, why do we hire you?
Right. But I also feel like a lot of things that's out there for people to get their knowledge up, it's not put forth in a way that they can actually absorb. It's information overload.
We have that is an issue.
I don't think
across all disciplines. Yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah, I don't think it's nothing is out there to say, hey, this course is made for people who are about to be a GRC analyst in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So common things that you would ask or things that you should know at a foundational level or telling you to study these, like that doesn't exist. So it's already hard enough when you get to a company that I was talking to my manager about this, like how a lot of people are surprised you go to different organizations, as much money and stuff that they make, infrastructure wise, networking wise, security wise, trash.
Yeah.
No documentation, nothing. Here, give you a laptop and figure it out.
Yeah.
So you're doing that with people with no experience. How do you think they're going to respond? They're going to ask a lot of questions because you didn't have anything set forth, no training materials to help them kind of say, okay, for the first 4 weeks, this is all you're going to do.
You're actually right. That from my experience, that has also been consistent when I started in GRC. There was no like, hey, you're the GRC guy for the company. Here's what you need to do. You need to work with legal for a few weeks, get to understand their legal processes and what they're looking at, and then you got to go to the to the systems engineers and go to their architecture reviews. Like there was never a sequencing training. It's kind of like, hey, we have this compliance certification coming up. Figure it out. We got to make sure we're compliant. Otherwise, we're going to lose this multi-million-dollar deal. And that's a good point because it probably does exist, but it's probably in the margins. Like teams that actually say, hey, you're the GRC on the team. Here's a clear-cut description of what your job is as a risk advisor, as the sometimes as a GRC pro, you'll probably play the internal audit as well. But yeah, that's a good point. I have not seen like a clear-cut, hey, these 4 weeks you're doing this, we gotta train you up on this. These 4 weeks we're gonna train you up on this. These 4 weeks, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
The only place I ever got training in was help desk.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Like they had training, they monitored your calls for a couple of weeks. You got the drive with the advanced analysts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You had actual KBs that you can go to that directly told you what you could do. Other than that, every other thing is kind of like,
that's a good point.
Figure it out. Ask somebody.
But speaking of help desk, I know a lot of people tend to bag on help desk, but like, I didn't do help desk, but some days I'm like, man, I tell myself I wish I did help desk because the skills learned as in help desk or system administration, that's the foundation for any engineering architect job that you could think of.
Yeah, I say as long as it's a good one.
Yeah.
Sometimes I come across some BS help desk stuff that people do. I'm like, this ain't it.
Yeah.
Then you got the ones that's like where you actually doing work, but they call you help desk so they're gonna pay you.
There's some security folks that was doing serious security work and also networking work, like cable management, setting up router and switching, setting up the network architecture. They they have help desk.
Yeah.
On their titles. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's why I say, man, let's change this stuff so you get your money.
Yeah. Good point.
I have questions. So, how do you get buy-in when teams push back on governance without sounding like the cloud police?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I'm in charge of making sure that every dollar that goes into our cloud spend, there's an ROI on that, right? I'm also responsible for making sure that there's not too many security compliance like violations within an account. So to getting buy-in doesn't happen when friction happens. Getting buy-in happens way before that. Getting buy-in, as soon as you start your role, you should figure out who are the parties that you'll be working with, and you should start already doing rapid risk assessments where you're getting to know these people. hey, I just put some time in the calendar. I'm working on this this compliance side of the house here. I just want to build rapport with you, get to know you, and really just understand the initiative that you got going on. Now, when you're advising on risk, right, you know, they know that, hey, I know what your program is doing. I know what your application, what this initiative is about. I'm in support of that, right? Now, when they know that and that relationship is built, now you know you can have an educated conversation. You could push back and, you know, play that little game of tug of war. You know, it doesn't always have to be adversarial. It's adversarial when you guys got no relationship. The first time I'm talking to y'all is when there's a compliance violation, right? You want to make sure that, well, you're not always gonna know everybody within the company, but having a relationship with those key players across different teams, across different initiatives, you know, I think that, from my experience, that's helped out a lot. Because, for example, I'll get a scenario where, you know, there's like a file storage that's unencrypted, you know, and this specific, you know, application, this team, they have multiple file storages not encrypted. And because I've already built a relationship with them on other events, like let's just say they had their cloud bill that was too high, and they had EC2s, like virtual machines running 24/7, where really, you know, they didn't need those virtual machines to run 24/7. And we've addressed that before. But like now meeting them again, I'm like, oh, it's Abdi, you know, he's got our back. You know, I think the people that you're working with, they need to know that you're here to support them, you're here to advise them, and you want to champion them. Because sometimes another thing I've noticed with some folks too is that you just send a bunch of documentation to them. I get it. People should do their homework. People should be reading. But people, including myself, are lazy. We don't want to read. We don't want to read, especially if it's like a 20-page documentation, right? So having like a 15-minute call saying, hey, here's how you do this. Like, you don't want to use for example, here's a part of cloud governance, right? Cloud governance, you know, you want to make sure that you're addressing shadow IT. Shadow IT is a big deal. You know, from a security lens, it's a big deal. From a cost lens, like business lens, it's a big deal. From an operational lens, it's a big deal. So addressing, like let's say someone doesn't know how to decommission their AWS account, right? The last person using it, they got fired, they got laid off, or, you know, the team's not even using it anymore, right? And we got a bunch of servers in that account just running. That's some security risk right there. We don't even know who owns it anymore. What's going on, right? And if I need to address that with them, instead of sending them a bunch of documentation on how to do it, say, hey, let's hop on a 15-minute call. Let's decommission this account together. That, in my opinion, is how you do effective security, effective GRC.
But that takes a skill set, like you said, the technical skill set.
This is true.
To teach them or walk them through how to decommission the server properly, because you have the skill set. Versus you sending them documentation because you don't know how to do it, but you know what the directions say to point them to.
That is true. That is completely different. Yeah, we just send them documentation. I don't know what the documentation said, but apparently this works. Yeah, that's definitely different than hopping on a call and walking them through and showing them the dependencies. Like, all right, first you want to delete this, then delete this. That's a good point. Mic drop. Mic drop again.
See, and that's why I like a tool like Loom, because you can just make a walkthrough and they can just watch it or show you when they watched it. They can ask questions at different parts of the video. But of course, a lot of companies, they don't really want to use the third-party stuff all the time because they just want to know, well, who has the data? Because Loom uses a lot of AI and stuff. Like, put it like this. Let's say you wanted, remember earlier how I was talking about the issue with no documentation?
Yeah.
With Loom,
which is a big issue across the whole every company. Like, no matter what company you work at, any business you work with, documentation is a challenge.
So with Loom, you could record the decommission process.
Yeah.
And it has functionality inside the actual tool that'll say, hey, turn this into an SOP. So now,
wait, just off that recording?
Yeah. And
it's a clean SOP?
Yeah.
Formatted sections?
It does everything. It transcribes calls, helps people with action items from the call.
Interesting.
It can make blog posts out of stuff. It's a tool I've been using for a while, and I always like go somewhere like, this could have been a Loom. I mean, I ain't have to listen to this right now. You can speed the speed up, 1.5, 2x.
Yeah.
So that's where I think I like the productivity side of AI.
Yeah.
And speaking of like the shadow IT stuff, how have y'all been, I guess, trying to combat that, with the different things that people are doing? Y'all are pretty much more of a on-site hybrid environment, right?
Yeah, we're hybrid. Yeah. And truth be told, most companies that have been around for a long time, they're more than likely hybrid. Yeah.
I think that kind of helps y'all circumvent the fake North Korean IT workers.
That's a thing. That is a thing. Yeah. I'd say we're addressing shadow IT. Number one, I work for a really, really big company. Addressing shadow IT. Number one, first, it boils down. There's a lot of angles you have to attack to address shadow IT. There's a lot of different angles you have to attack. Number one, you have to attack culture. First, like that, like we have to address the culture, the philosophy, how we are doing business. What are our values as a company? Is our values as a company wasting resources? Is that our value? If it's not, okay. If our value and culture of leadership drives the point, I'm talking about the directors, VPs, all the way to the C-suite. They have to, from the top down, drive a culture where they say, hey, we want to be intentional with our resources. When that happens, then you have stronger, onboarding, offboarding procedures, right? When that happens, you have, you have automations in place. You have, automatic emails in place. Like, hey, we haven't seen y'all log into this account in 90 days. Yeah. What's up, right?
We're about to disable it.
We're about to disable it, and I think that all of that culture, and there's going to be less pushback if the culture, the leadership at the top level, they've already made it very clear, like, hey, as a company, we're going to be intentional with our IT resources. We're not going to waste. We're not going to waste money. We're not going to, buy licenses that we don't need, buy new security tools that we don't need. That we already had in-house tools that already address that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, when it comes to addressing shadow IT, before we get to the policies, procedures, the automations, like you said, it's going to boil down to culture, and that culture is defined by our leadership.
Right. So when I brought that up, the reason why I said that is because now I had saved this on LinkedIn, but the people can use these programs where they can look and sound like anybody.
Is that Elon?
Yeah.
Elon Musk?
Yeah. That's not actually him. That's somebody.
But that look like him.
Yeah.
What is it, a deepfake?
Yep.
Yeah, we're cooked.
Remind me of that Hong Kong situation.
Yeah, but this one works because you could pick.
He has a flashlight. He's trying to show that, hey, like...
It's me.
It's me, yeah. Yeah, it's getting to a point where, like... I'm becoming, like... starting to have a lot of distrust. I already had a little bit of distrust on the internet, but now it's to the point where I'm like, I don't even believe the headline. No, I don't know. I don't believe the headline. I don't believe the video. Like I wonder what, how like when you have there's digital signatures on emails or on like on emails, when you're sending across the network, right? Like there's digital signatures that exist to maintain the integrity, making sure that the data, the email was not tampered with.
Right.
I wonder how's that going to work with AI? Will there be an integrity process to make sure that, hey, this is actually not a deep fake? Here's a signature. Here's a stamp. That, you know what I mean? Like that approves that. I wonder if that's something that's in the works, because it's going to get to the point where like, anything on the internet, you're not going to trust it.
I think we will. Aliases have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I worked at a company where we had an alias, so if we had to call help desk, we had to give them an alias, which is not your name, your email, or anything that's associated with knowing that, if my initials are PQ, it's not associated with that. Yeah. There's some random generated digits.
So like SSO.
Essentially. And so they would be like, can I get your alias? And boom, you give the alias. Who else is going to know it? Mm-hmm. No one else is going to know it but you. So I think we might be moving to something like that to verify who you are, because how would they know your alias? It's almost like your auth app. How would they know unless you gave it away or gave it to someone? To do that as a check, for example, because there's a lot of help desk related account takeovers. Mm-hmm. So as a second factor of validation, who am I speaking with? Okay, great. Can you give me your alias? Boom. How can I help you? Mm. So cutting down a lot of the riff.
Yeah.
I know. I said something like,
and that's something that's like assigned to you through like HR.
Right.
So if you were to leave the company and come back, they're going to get that alias back to you because it was already assigned to you.
Speaking of that, that's something that
instead of like deleting your account,
right,
it just goes inactive or they deactivate it.
Oh. Yeah, and we actually been talking about something like that actually just on a bigger use case. We talking about all these breaches and stuff, your socials, and we're like, why are we using that important information at all these companies versus, like she said, using an alias that's tied to a social on the back end. Good old database, primary child.
Yeah.
And then you have to just worry about the security of whatever it is that's giving you those random digits or wherever they're housed to map back to that.
So now people's got to make sure the Oracle database is locked down tight.
Yeah, it's encrypted at rest and all that.
So I don't know, it's really interesting. I think like maybe even people will be able to pick up like technology that looks for different frequencies and talking when it comes to an actual human versus an AI voice, and maybe look for disparities there. There'll probably be some ways around it.
That's what lately. I'll be honest. Like I might get in trouble for this, but I've gotten tired of our industry with the sales and marketing and the hype of AI, and you can tell that someone doesn't know what they're talking about when they're using a bunch of buzzwords, right? The true, as we all know, someone who really understands what they're talking about. They explain it in a way that a child can understand. And, I grow tired of just on the internet, and this is just a rant. We can clip this up, with these AI buzzwords. So that kind of, like a lot of AI this, AI that, but, saying AI is going to do this, it's going to do that, it's going to do this, all these predictions. It's predictions coming from people who've never done a research paper, who've never done, you've never been in the arena.
They don't even know what the definition of AI is. Starting there.
You don't even know how operating systems work, and you're making such a bold prediction, right? And I'm not talking about Mark Zuckerberg and, homeboy from NVIDIA. I'm not talking about those guys. Those guys, they started in engineering. I'm talking, and
they talking about the regular person.
I'm talking about these people with the blue check marks on Twitter and
the people who say it's going to take over the jobs.
Well, people get paid for they post on X. So
that's a good point. There's a lot
of rage debate you see on there.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that kind of pushed me away from trying to even pick up a book on AI. I'll be honest, but lately I've been reading a little bit more, getting into it, and I'm really curious, how companies are going to address security and cost risks with both of those, because AI is not cheap. Those servers, those GPUs are not; those things are not cheap. And I think this is my bold prediction. Not bold, but it's just a prediction. I do believe that as companies aggressively adopt this and try to do layoffs, there's going to be a big technical debt. A lot of technical debt.
Oh yeah.
That I think they'll have to rehire some people.
Klarna thought they was gonna move to just using all these AI agents and stuff like that, just for the CEO to kind of recant, like, we got to hire people again. Yeah. Because
technical debt will. Technical debt is the cost of doing business, right? You're gonna get into some technical debt. However, too much technical debt, that will slow you down. That will slow you down for sure, and.
Yeah, because you're going to have to constantly try to update the AI to kind of perform whatever, when you can just hire humans. Like, nobody wants to talk to a robot, but I need to talk about some customer service.
I never enjoyed those automated customer service
calls. I'm beeping
calls.
zero so many times.
Agent, please.
Beep. Agent.
Like, seriously. Yeah. I think that eventually everybody will need to have a foundational knowledge and understanding of AI because it's not going anywhere.
For sure.
But it will be interesting to see what that looks like. And I do mean just a basic understanding. What is AI? What are large language models? What are some of the basic terms? Now we're moving over to agents. So, what does that look like? And I think that, like the people you were saying, there is going to be a shift in the mindset and the understanding, because it's going to become so consumable that you can just download an app and do whatever you need to do, So I do think it starts with people understanding a little bit more of the fundamentals as it pertains to AI.
For sure. Definitely understanding, kind of like how we went from on-prem to cloud, understanding that, hey, on-prem, all these networking devices, these servers, we use that for compute, networking, and storage. In cloud, we're still using compute, networking, and storage type of thing. And with AI, I think I definitely agree. I think understanding how it works, ultimately how the systems behind it works, I think definitely that's going to be critical. We're going to have to know, especially as engineers, practitioners, architects, advisors. We're going to have to know because, if we don't, our companies are gonna have a field day, a field years.
Yeah.
Every time you keep on saying we gotta know, I keep on thinking about that TikTok. Nobody's gonna know.
Nobody's gonna know. Nobody's gonna do.
That's what I keep thinking about.
That's funny.
Speaking of cloud governance, I mean, we're already moving into the age of AI governance.
Yeah, for sure.
You see nothing but companies hiring for AI governance.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of job roles with that. I'm seeing the big four, tap into that. AI auditing, AI governance. I think we're gonna need it. I think we're gonna need oversight.
They're gonna need you.
I see the bat signal. Let's do it. But yeah, I think it's going to be important. It's also like some as security practitioners, right? When we don't understand how something works, what do? We just say no. You can't use it. And I think companies across the board, you saying no to AI is not going to work. Mm-hmm. People are going to use ChatGPT if you ban it. They're going to use it.
No, that.
Unless you blacklist it, but I mean, they can just use their phone.
Thank you. They're just going to use it at work where you don't care. They can take a picture of what's on the screen.
So I think it's important in your training, your annual training, you start to tell your employees about AI risk.
Bingo.
Just like you're doing with, this is a good password. This is what it looks like. This is how you should be, Lord, getting on the VPN. Just how to use technology appropriately, but like also it's inappropriate to share business data.
Correct.
With unsecured solutions like ChatGPT, because this isn't we don't have a relationship with ChatGPT, so we can't govern what's happening with our data once you do whatever you're doing on your mobile device with it, because we blocked it at work. Vice versa. So I think we need to shift some of that into the training, and also doing these trainings more effectively, more often, not just once a year or part of orientation or onboarding, more than quarterly.
Yeah. Because
things are advancing day by day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
What do we decide that's a malicious prompt? Do your users know what that would be? So if they are trying to run any in your environment, they know that they could potentially be identified, or there could be an alert raised. So just some of the basics.
I think granted, like in tools like DOP, you can see if somebody's doing something on a certain site they're not supposed to be on. Like we'll see somebody upload something to iCloud or whatever. Like, we can't access that. I'm sending you to the insider threat team just to talk to you because, like, what are you doing? But like I said, the real culprit is the fact that now with all these good phones and stuff we have, you can't control what they're doing if they're remote or something, taking a picture, copying it.
Unless that phone is
a corporate phone.
A corporate phone, and if obviously the company has a good mobile device management.
If.
But even that though, I mean, they don't take nothing for somebody to have a phone and want to exfiltrate some data without having to exfiltrate.
Yeah.
So that's why like we love technology. It's like, I like this Apple. I like this Android.
Yeah.
But hey, you kind of overcooking my grits right here, because now I don't really have nothing to circumvent somebody from doing something with their own phone outside of finding out later and suing them.
I mean, you know how people say like humans are the biggest risk. Well, I mean, the kind of humans are the risk to everything. What are the problem? Well, it's gonna be the problem. But I think like you mentioned earlier, I think
training has to become better.
The training has to be embedded. The culture, not just free, not just mandatory training, but like you wanted to say like, hey, here's how you can use AI to be effective at your job. I think Shopify pretty much said like, if you're not using AI, don't talk to me about hiring anybody else.
They're gonna be like Klarna though, so it don't really matter.
Oh, where they get yeah. No, it's interesting times we're living in, because it's bizarre, because you see these layoffs, but you also see some of these new roles being created. It's I haven't looked too deep into the numbers, but I will say that I think, in my opinion, the pendulum is swinging too far one way, and I think correction will be happening over the next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean,
not like a 1-to-1, like more like for every 100 people you may have laid off, you'll probably hire 10 of them back, type of thing.
I think it's like
that's just what I think.
I think tech is just so popular right now because layoffs and stuff like this have been happening on this magnitude for a while, but it's just all in your face.
Focus is targeted. It's on
it is in my
media.
LinkedIn feed.
Yeah,
you know the feed.
But that's because you're in the field.
Yeah.
For folks that are probably outside of the field, like we don't really talk about healthcare layoffs.
No,
unless you're in the healthcare industry.
No,
but
we don't talk about
get
or manufacturing or any other sector, unless you're in that sector and you know kind of what's going on. So it could potentially seem like it's worse. I mean, we know it's higher, but it could seem like it's worse because we're in the field.
Yeah, that's a good point. Manufacturing has been getting gutted for decades.
Yeah, I think they'll be back with the tariffs. Who knows?
Shout out to the president.
But not. So, top 5 things somebody would need to know today in order to start a career working in GRC.
Top 5?
Top 5.
Shout out to top five. You know he's Somali.
Yep.
Yeah, he's one of my peoples. So top 5 skill sets. Okay. Number 1, you have to have effective communication. But obviously that's any domain skill.
We'll make it easier for you. We'll focus on you know how we're focusing on being technical. Like what would be some technical things or stuff they would need to know about if they want to start a job.
Networking fundamentals. Again, you don't have to be a CCIE. Just basic networking fundamentals. What is a router? What is a switch? You know, what is a packet? What is why do you want it? Why do we need to encrypt the traffic on a network? Why are companies concerned about what's going across the network? Understanding that. So just basic, TCP, IP, basic ports and protocols and how they work, right? Because regardless of what engineering or architect role that you might be playing, understanding what port 80 is you're going to need to know what port 80 is. Port 443. What is a SSL/TLS certificate? Why is that important, right? So basic networking fundamentals, and then I'd bleed into basic operating system fundamentals, like what is Active Directory? Again, you don't need to be the expert in Active Directory. You don't
just got to understand it.
You got to understand why do companies have Active Directory, right? Why? What is a Linux operating system? What is open source? What is what are the basic commands you can do on Linux to go through the command line, create, look at logs, see the activity happening within the machine, or troubleshoot an application. Like those are basic things, right? Because as a GRC, if you're auditing a Linux machine, you have to go in the Linux machine, SSH into it, understand what SSH is. Chances are your company might have like a captive portal or something to authenticate yourself again. Understand what that is, right? So basic networking, basic operating system, preferably Linux. And then from there, I would say, I would definitely say you need to learn how to influence people. And, GRC is really boils down to a game of influence. And if you're upsetting people based off of your tone of voice, your communication style, you need to do your part to address that. Because again, you're not the builder. I'm sorry, GRC folks. You're not the builder. The security folks, you're not the builder. We're not the builder. We're not building the platform. We're not building the application. The people who are building the product, they are ultimately what's generating revenue. So our jobs are to support that. Or we're in a supporting role. Very critical, very important. But you need to know how to influence those individuals, and you can only influence someone to the level of your ability to communicate effectively. And when I say communication, right, there's different domains of communication. Right here, this is interpersonal communication. We're hanging out and having a time, right? And then there's nonverbal communication in a meeting. Maybe you're on a Zoom call. Making sure that you're staring into the screen, making eye contact. During a face-to-face meeting, right? So I definitely say communication. That's number 3. Number 4. You have to understand that. I think a skill that you'll need is adapting. I mean, across all tech domains, but adapting as a GRC pro is going to be very important.
Right.
Because I mean, y'all work in security. You guys are seeing all these new tools every day. Development teams are using. You know, things are moving. Things are moving at a faster pace. You know, and I think you as a GRC pro, you have to understand the tools of the trade in the industry, but more importantly, understand the tools of the trade that your company is using. Mm-hmm. So if your company is using, is using Oracle database, I think it'd be beneficial for you to learn about Oracle databases. If your company is using, Nginx as their web server, I think you should go learn about Nginx, what it is and why is it important. And you as a professional, okay, what are the risks of using this web server? What needs to be in place to use this web server in an effective, secure way? So that's number 4, learn the tech stack within your organization. And number 5, I would say, I think a skill that you need to have is you need to have patience, because people will get offended by calling their baby ugly. You will say, hey, there's this risk. You got to remember that you're calling their application their baby ugly. For
some people, it put like that.
Huh?
I said I never heard it put like that.
Yeah, like think about it. You're a developer. You put your heart, blood, and soul into this platform, and you have this GRC person telling you how to do your job. You're gonna be like,
right.
So you have to say, hey, listen, I'm not here to tell you how to do your job, but I do believe if we are compliant with these minimal security requirements, we'll have a better finished product. And I know you want to have a better finished product, because that means your leaders are going to be happy, our customers are going to be happy, we're all going to be happy, right? So I think understanding that is going to be very important, that you got to have a high level of patience, because, some people get annoyed when they get a bunch of emails with security vulnerabilities. You're
preaching to the choir.
They get annoyed when they get a bunch of non-compliance emails. They get annoyed when they get a bunch of, hey, your cloud bill is out the rails. What's going on, right? They get annoyed by all these emails. And, for them, they're focused on, hey, they have this deadline. Their director told them that they need to meet for this particular sprint, right? And, so when you come into that, right, chances are they didn't, I'm ashamed to say this, but there's a high level of chance, right? In these sprints, there's no hours or budget to put for security.
Yeah.
Right. There's no hours. There's no hours budgeted in. No money budgeted into story points. Is that what we call it these days? Story points. There's no story points. Story points for sustainment, security, addressing security or cost gaps. Right. So you're coming in. You're interrupting their workflow. So you have to understand as a GRC pro, you have to be patient and understand whether you're working with a systems engineer, a software engineer, a web developer, whatever team that you're working with, legal, understand that, to a degree you are interrupting their respective workflow. And, having patience and empathy is critical in your role. Because if you don't, you won't last that long. Mm-hmm. You won't last that long. You'll be upset. You'll be crying in the car every day, wondering why people won't listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because really that last part that you displays really emotional intelligence.
Yeah, legit. Yeah. Emotional intelligence. At the end of the day.
Really, that's the best way to have it. But I'm surprised you didn't say learn one of the clouds.
I was gonna say cloud, but I would say that goes into the operating system and networking, because ultimately cloud is an abstraction of on-prem, right? So I would say, yeah, definitely cloud. That is correct. Learn cloud, but I would say before you learn cloud, just understanding those networking fundamentals and operating system fundamentals, that will give you a strong advantage point when you get into start learning cloud, because now you learn about how networks work at a basic level. You learn about how our operating system works. Now that we're using cloud, it's still
same thing, just jumping together.
Yeah.
And it's just different with all the different services they got. Like that's probably like the thing. Like you're like, oh, we can do this, we can do this. Oh, we got some of these compliance features. Oh, we have. Like for AWS, I know that's why I work with most, like, guard duty or SMS and CloudShare, all those different things.
Yeah.
VPC flows, they can kind of show you these different things that you need, of course, based on compliance standards. So whatever you got to be subjugated to compliant to. Mm-hmm. So it's right here. We got all these.
Yeah.
So that's that's the thing too, is like when you get more experience, you start seeing like how your job like kind of ties in to other areas. When you first start, you just so siloed in and think it's just this, but then take about 15 steps back, and then you start seeing everybody's like connected to make sure just the company's making money.
That's a good point. I think, yeah, as you grow in your career, especially if you want to make it to that like principal engineer or that director VP level, you know, you have to have this thing we call systems thinking, understanding how all the different pieces of the puzzle work together. And, you know, you have to understand what your role, how your team, how your directorate, how that plays in the role in the bigger picture. Because now when you understand how your role, how your team, how your program, how everything that you're doing plays in the bigger picture, now you can make a better informed decision. You know, and I think especially like if you're like you know, if you're like an architect or you work in incident response, right? You've been building, or GRC, you've been building relationships across the organization with different teams, understanding how they work, right? Like, let's just say legal, for example, accounting, finance. Now you understand how the whole business works. And like, okay, now I know how my role supports all these other functions. And that gives you a competitive edge, in my opinion.
No, for sure.
What surprised you most about the work you do today, maybe compared to what you expected it to be like breaking in?
When I first started versus now. Surprising. There are quite a few surprises. I have two, but the other one I will not say on television. I will share with y'all after this episode. Check on the Patreon. But one that surprised me, and I don't think all teams are this way. We're all human, right? So we got bad apples, you have good apples. But, you know, what surprised me is how sometimes corporate can be pretty ruthless. You know, sometimes the people that you work with, unfortunately, can be pretty ruthless, as in like, and I don't think it's they're intentionally being that way. Sometimes it's like pure, like they're not even aware that what they're doing is a little foul.
Tell me about it.
You know, so like I had a situation where like it'll be the small things where I've already responded to an email, but because this individual does not check their emails all the way through, they're also sending a response, but they didn't know that their response just threw me under the bus. Right? Because let's say I make a mistake in the email.
I'm going to say they did know it threw you on the bus.
You saw what?
I'm going to say they did know.
Yeah, you called. Yeah, but yeah. But yeah, like it's one of those things where like, you know, it's common sense. Like let's say your teammate, they sent a response to a customer and it was not the best answer or it wasn't fully correct. Instead of replying and correcting your teammate with the customer on the thread, why not just message your teammate on the side? Hey, Abdi, real quick, just want to let you know that wasn't the best tool for this use case. You might want to use this instead. Let the customer know that. Boom, problem solved. And what does that do? Now I have a tighter knit relationship with my teammate. And what do we always say? Teamwork makes the dream work.
That's my motto.
You know, and for me, I've had a lot of situations like that where it'll be those little things where like, hey, we'll have a meeting, right? And I remember when I first started, we had a meeting, right? And mind you, I just started. I'm like my first weekend, we had a meeting, right? And no one on the team thought, you know what? Maybe let's grab Abdi. You know, even though he was invited to this meeting, let's grab him. You know, before we all hit this meeting, I just joined the company. I don't even know how to use Outlook like that yet.
Ooh.
You know,
you brought up something else. It's like back to the new hire. Like there's so much stuff they don't teach you in school on like just office etiquette, how to work.
No, dude, I've never taken a class on office etiquette. I had to learn that. Like, hey, here's how office works. If there's gossip, you probably want to stay away from it. You know, you probably don't want to talk about XYZ in the office, right? Mm-hmm. You probably want to, you know, like just basic stuff that you felt like, you know, I wish I knew this walking in. So I would say, you know, my biggest surprise is how ruthless corporate can be and how sometimes you have to remember that you might have a strict honor code, a strict value system, but you have to remember not everyone that you work with shares that value system.
Yeah.
Nice. And well, you kind of answered that. I was going to, it's this thing I've been doing in the last couple of episodes. Yeah. I stole it from Jay Valentine, I think it's called I Ain't Saying No Names. It's where you talk about like a funny situation or something at work or something that happened, but you can't say no names.
Okay. Okay. Funny situation.
sometimes it might ain't got to be work. It just got to be funny.
No. I'll share with work. I have no. We're all family here, and the TechTual Talk. You know, we're all family here. I had a situation where, you know, I work in GovTech, and a lot of veterans work in GovTech, and there are a lot of people who work in GovTech who are also passionate about the mission of GovTech. And sometimes that passion may lead them to curse out of passion for the work. And, you know, yes, it's not professional to curse, but people do curse in the office. This is a fact. People curse in the office. Your directors, your VPs, they're human beings. I'm not saying cursing is good. I'm not encouraging cursing. But all I'm here to share that it does happen. And I had a colleague, because one day I had a crazy situation happen. I won't get into that specific situation. It was like something with a project, like with a new deadline that we got. I won't get into the details of how that happened. But what I can say is a new project, new deadline happened, and I had a mouth of a sailor for that 5 minutes, you know, and I was upset, you know, and me and my other teammates were upset because this means we may have to work a couple weekends. You know, and I'm not against working on the weekend if it's a critical project, but this is one of those situations where we were calling it 6 months out. Like, hey, we got to address this now. But now, because y'all didn't listen, we have to work on the next 3-4 weekends. And I had a teammate at the time who overheard us cursing. And this gentleman, unfortunately, he didn't just go to my manager. He went to HR. Let me say that again in case the viewers did not hear what I just said. He didn't go straight to my manager. He went to HR first. And then he told my manager. And, you know, like my teammates, mind you, they have families to feed, man. And instead of being a teammate and saying, hey, listen, I know you guys curse and whatnot, and I'm okay with that, but just around me, give more. I'd appreciate it if we just kept the cursing to a minimum. Can we do that? If that individual say, hey, I'd appreciate it if you kept the cursing to a minimum, I say totally, no problem, right? But mind you, the guy just joined the team. 2 weeks in, he just joined the team. The guy that told on us straight to HR, 2 weeks in the team, he told HR.
So Randall was trying to get a promotion.
Exactly that.
Did it work?
No. My manager came to us. He just pretty much told us what happened. He said, my manager said, I'm be honest, I don't care. However, I'm according to policy, we shouldn't be doing X, Y, Z. You know, we shouldn't be cursing. And moving forward, let's dial it back. Let's keep professional as possible. And then another incident happened where it wasn't me, but it was the two other guys on my team. The guy that told the first time, he overheard the conversation, and it wasn't at him. It was just them cursing about a situation that they were in. He told HR again, and he emailed the policies describing what was going on. So
he's just a butthole.
Pretty much. And, you know...
I got a follow-up there.
Yeah.
So can you talk about how important it is to be able to bounce back from situations like that and still be able to effectively work with someone in that situation? Because we encounter that all the time, not necessarily that particular situation, but we still have to go to work. We still have to do our job. We still have to buddy it, it up in order to not hinder yourself and your stability and your growth.
Yeah, I think to be in that situation, resentment will not be helpful for you. You're going to be half a step slower in your job. You're going to be sending emails from a place of anger, right? You might blow up on your family at the house, you know.
Yeah.
But when they have nothing to do with it, right? So in that situation, you know, and again, you know, everybody, their religion, their value system might be different, but having a healthy spirit of forgiveness, I think is beneficial, not just for them, but more importantly, you.
For yourself.
Yeah.
For yourself. It's really for you, not for them.
It's not for them. It's really for me. Like, I need to forgive you because I can't be my best self right now. So I think having in those type of situations, number one, having some forgiveness in you, forgiving the individual that committed the crime. Don't forget.
Right.
Don't forget, because if you forget, you might get caught lacking again.
Yep.
Right? But
Fool me once.
Yeah, that's right. Fool me twice. You know, so I would say definitely having a spirit of forgiveness, but also in terms of bouncing back from that, you have to understand, right? Sometimes people you work with can be your friends, but oftentimes that is not the case. You are getting paid to do a job. You're getting paid to do a task. That's ultimately why you're there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like, I like how like the Netflix former CEO, he talks about, you know, work is not your family. Work is a sports team.
That's kind of like a red flag when they say we're a family.
Oh, it's the biggest red flag. If they say we're a family, you might, unless it's a small knit company, startup family, like a startup company, and like everybody knew each other growing up type of thing. Like there's like a bunch of relations growing up. I get that, but yeah, if a company says we're a family, don't do that. That's disingenuous. Mm-hmm. That's disingenuous because you can't fire your family,
right?
And if you do, you know, Thanksgiving is going to be awkward.
Yeah.
Facts.
You know?
Unless you got a good reason, I guess, to fire a family.
They'd have to commit something heinous, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say navigating those situations, you got to have a spirit of forgiveness, and you have to understand that the people that you're working with, they're not your family, right? So you have a job to do, they have a job to do. Have that conversation with them. Like, hey, I apologize if you know if what I said did offend you. And, you know, moving forward, you know, I hope we can move past this, and I hope we can continue to work together and do our best work, because that's why we're here. We got a job to do. You know, let's not be the reason why we can't do our jobs, because now the whole team is sinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. So, Abdie, how do the listeners and the audience, how do they keep up with you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn pretty often, so give me a holler on LinkedIn at Abdie Mohamed. Abdie, A as in apple, B as in boy, D as in dog, I-E, last name Mohamed, M-O-H-A-M-E-D. Look me up. I'll be sure to connect and follow back. And then I'm on Instagram as well, A Mohamed Elevate, A as in apple, and then Mohamed, M-O-H-A-M-E-D, .elevate, E-L-E-V-A-T-E. And yeah, feel free to keep up with me there. And big shout out to the lovely hosts, you know, the TechTual Talk. You know, the first time I was here, I had a blast. The second time around was even better. And it's crazy because when we did this last time, it was virtual. Mm-hmm. And now y'all got a studio. You know, you see what happens when you work hard. You see this? When you stay focused.
Tell them to keep watching.
Keep watching. It's you know, there's something special happening here. And yeah, thank you both for the platform, for the opportunity to share my story, and always an opportunity to learn from y'all. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Appreciate it, man. And for the ladies watching, are you single?
I am single. Yeah, I am single.
They be coming to the platform, so that's why I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Hey, shoot your best shot. If you wanted to be screened by me first, send it on IG and we'll check it out.
He's on his Kevin Samuels. You on the Kevin Samuels. Listen. I am single. That is what it is. I am single, and
I wish I could title the episode "I Am Single."
Yo, man, that would be crazy. Hashtag I'm single. This should be in the Patreon. For sure. Or like the exclusive.
It'd be like maybe a clip just for like TikTok or something. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But guys, thanks for tuning in to the episode of TechTual Talk. As we say, until next time, let's stay textual, and we out. Peace. I wish I did.